Hello, welcome to Running on Carbs Podcast. I am Coach Val. I am your host, as always, on the Running on Carbs podcast. And I want to welcome you to episode number 12 of the podcast. I am super excited to be here, as always. And today we're going to be talking about, again, all things nutrition and running related nutrition, as we always do here on this channel. And today we're going to specifically talk about navigating plant-based nutrition labels. And this is one of those things that when you go through school, go through life, if you were not raised in a way that you had parents or family that taught you how to look at nutrition labels and how to read nutrition labels and what to look for and what to look out for, you might not be familiar with the process, especially if it's not something that you've looked into. Maybe plant-based nutrition is new to you, or maybe nutrition in general is something that you've only recently come into and taken an interest in. And so maybe you've never had an opportunity to really learn about what's on a nutrition label. How do you decipher it, and what should you maybe look for? And especially when you're plant-based or new to plant-based living, nutrition labels can be a little tricky, as we'll see as we move along through today's episode. So we will get started with that in just a minute, but I wanted to share something fun that I did this weekend having to do with plant-based nutrition. I attended a lecture, book lecture presentation from Dr. Michael Greger. And Dr. Michael Greger, if you aren't aware, is the founder of nutritionfacts.org. And it is one of the premier sites to go to if you have any questions about evidence-based plant-based nutrition. So he goes through with his organization, it's a nonprofit, and he goes through all the different studies that come out regarding nutrition, and he summarizes it and he deciphers it and he helps break it down into manageable information that an everyday person can absorb, understand, and then use in their life. So if you ever have any questions about a certain food or maybe something having to do with health, nutrition, and certainly anything plant-based, if you go to nutritionfacts.org, which I'll put the link to in the show notes, if you go there, there's a great search feature and you can just type it in. So if you're curious to know about beets, let's say, because I talk a lot about beets and the nitrates in them and the benefits of them. And if you want to know more about that and say, what is Coach Val talking about when it comes to beets and nitrates, and what is she really going on about? Go there, type in beets into the search feature, and it'll pop up and show you different videos and articles relating to beets, and then you'll understand why I love them so much. So you can do that with lots of different things, and I strongly encourage you to play with it and check it out. So this weekend, he was doing a book lecture because he just came out with a somewhat new book called How Not to Age. And he was talking about some of the details from that book. The book itself is massive because I think half of it is citations of different studies and resources and such that you can go to and search yourself to verify the information that he is talking about in his book. So it's all laid out there for you if you are one that wants to research and really dive in. Otherwise, he talks about the summary of everything. So you don't have to read all of those studies if it's not something you want to do or something you're not familiar with doing. You don't have to. That's the point of his nonprofit. And so during this presentation, he was going through some of the highlights of that book, which I have, and I have not finished yet, admittedly. It's on my Kindle and my Kindle Fire, and I've been listening to it. But I have not finished the book yet. It is heavy on the science, I gotta say. So some of that terminology in there, if you are not, if you don't have a background in science, or if you don't have a background in the medical field of some kind, It can be pretty technical. So I oftentimes have to go back and listen to it again or reread it or hear it again. So I really enjoyed being able to listen to the book so far and then go to the lecture and hear him speak about it again. Because when you hear things more than once, then it starts to sink in or you hear it a different way and then it clicks or makes sense. So at least that's how my brain works. I don't have one of those, glorious photographic memories. I wish I did, but I don't. So I listened to it more than once. So anyway, I listened to his presentation and he opened up his lecture with a question. And he said, "Why do some people live to 100 while others don't?" Well, what a fantastic question. Lots of different reasons, I suppose. So he discussed the blue zones, and that again is another book that you can look up. There's also a short series on Netflix that's available where they talk about the blue zones. And the blue zones are the areas of the world that have the highest concentration of centurions, people who have lived to 100 or more. And so Dan Buettner did a study and has gone to these different locations around the world to talk to the people and to do studies and find out why are they living to 100? Why are they living so well? And it's not just that they're living to 100, it's that they're thriving into their, centurion age. So he wanted to know why, what are the indicators and where's the crossover and similarities between these different areas of the world. And that's a whole book of its own that you can read, and I encourage you to do that too. But what it came down to, if you summarize it somewhat, this was not the pure discussion of Dr. Greger's presentation, but he touched on it. 95% of those living in those blue zones, 95% are primarily plant-based. So that means that they may incorporate some animal products, but most of them are primarily plant-based, have a plant-based diet. They also, when they drink mostly water. So not a lot of no soft drinks and things like that. Um, their protein source is primarily found from beans and legumes, and then secondarily from grains. So when you put all that together, that's a pretty simple diet and pretty, simple to put together and to eat, and seen to be a very healthy diet. And another thing that Dr. Greger talked about during the presentation that I really appreciated and I liked hearing and seeing the science behind was that it doesn't matter what age you are when you start this diet, when you start a plant-based diet. The health benefits are seen whether you start in your 20s or your 50s or your 70s. If you change to a whole food plant-based diet, in your 50s, he said that you can add 12 years to your life. And I suppose there's probably a study in the book, so don't quote me on the studies because I don't have those. But they are all in the How Not to Age book if you really want to dive into this. Before that, you can add 18 years to your life. So if you start a whole food plant-based diet and you're not quite 50 yet, you might be able to add 18 years to your life. That is significant. And this is not just years to your life. This is life to your years too. Along with other healthy lifestyle changes, of course, such as moderate exercise and there's also daily not meditation practice, but mindfulness practice. So there's a number of factors that go into this longevity. But simply changing your diet has a significant impact on your overall health and longevity. Just swapping out 3% to plant proteins makes a difference. Like, for example, swapping out scrambled eggs for scrambled tofu makes a significant difference. Physical activity, though, does not slow aging. So just being a runner, for example, is not going to slow the aging process, but in combination with the whole foods plant-based diet and moderate exercise, it has been shown to have a positive impact on health and longevity. I love this saying where he says, Prevention isn't sexy. And it's so true because when prevention works, nothing happens. You just you live. You feel healthy. You don't feel sick. So you just nothing happens. And I kind of liken that to a training plan. When you follow a training plan, you have to trust the process. And if you trust the process, you have success. It's when you don't follow the plan or you don't follow the eating plan and then bad things happen. So I don't know, you overdo it and you get injured. Or if you are, eating in an unhealthy manner, then you develop some sort of chronic disease or metabolic disease. Not to say that if you are on a whole foods plant-based diet that you could not have a metabolic disorder. There's a lot of factors that go into health, but the concept and the idea is to give you the leg up. It's to give you the best chance possible and to give your body the best chance possible for optimum health. So if you want that optimum health, you can't get it by, eating birthday cake every day. As much as I would love to eat birthday cake every day, I want that optimum health, and therefore I don't. So it's all about choices too. He touched on two of my favorite vegetables during his presentation: leafy greens and beets, two things that I eat nearly every day. Um, he mentioned how the nitrates in both of those foods improve efficiency of the mitochondria, which then protects against frailty and improves muscle strength, growth, endurance, all the good things that we want as endurance athletes. So, beets and greens. He also touched on cocoa powder and its role in skin health and the reduction of wrinkles. And I actually put up a little post on Instagram about the differences between cacao powder and cocoa powder. And, if you want to know, cacao powder wins out. But cocoa powder has a lot of health benefits also, if you prefer that taste. I personally prefer cacao powder. And if you go to Instagram, you can see my post on that. And if you go to the caption, I have a very short recipe for one of my favorite drinks to use cacao powder in. So if you're interested, go to Instagram and it's there. So again, I'll add the link to nutritionfacts.org in the show notes if you want to go over there and take a look at it. All right, so let's jump into our discussion today. And I do have slides on this presentation or this podcast, this discussion, because there are some visuals that I wanted to put up with regards to nutrition labels. So if you want the visuals, you can jump over to YouTube and watch this presentation. Or if you're listening to it on a podcast and you want to go look at it later, that's fantastic. Otherwise, it's not 100% necessary if you don't want the visuals. If you are familiar with what a nutrition label looks like, you're probably just fine. But I wanted to let you know that there are visuals on YouTube for this episode. As a plant-based athlete, it's really important to know how to read the nutrition labels because, like I was saying earlier, most people aren't taught how to read nutrition labels unless you've attended a nutrition course. When I was going through school, even in high school health class, I don't recall anyone ever teaching me how to read a nutrition label. And if they did, it certainly wasn't from a plant based perspective, 100%. So, as a plant based individual, you need to teach yourself or learn from these other sources, like my podcast here, on how to do that and what to look for yourself when it comes to plant based nutrition. One of the biggest frustrations of mine is when I meet somebody or talk with someone and they tell me that, they're an athlete and they used to be plant-based or they used to be vegan, but they aren't any longer because they couldn't get the nutrition that they needed, or they were tired, or they weren't getting enough calories or something like that. Some sort of, it sounds like an excuse. Um, but what I really chalk that up to is a lack of education. Whether they didn't want to be educated, I don't know, maybe, or maybe they, simply thought it was too much work. Sometimes, it can be effort. So, but it just instantly tells me that their diet was not sufficient for their level of activity. I mean, bottom line, whatever they were doing was obviously not working if they didn't feel good. And then they stopped eating that way, went back to eating the way they used to eat, or they incorporated other foods into their diet that were no longer plant based, and they started feeling better. That tells me that whatever they were doing while they were plant based or vegan wasn't sufficient. They simply didn't have the right ratios or the right amounts for whatever activity it was that they were doing. Not to say that they couldn't have done it, they just maybe didn't know how. And honestly, that's why I do what I do, is because it is such a passion of mine, and it is such a frustration of mine when I talk to people who have given up on it. Not because they didn't like it, not because they didn't enjoy it, but they just didn't know. And so I want to help people make it through that and over that hump, so that they don't get frustrated and they can have all of the benefits that we were just talking about from Dr. Greger. All of the longevity and health and improved biomarkers and all of that. So, um, so that is why I do what I do. So it's not complicated to eat a balanced plant-based diet, but it certainly does take some effort. But honestly, so does any balanced diet for performance. You're going to have to put effort into it. You will likely have to track your macros, at least in the beginning, so you have an idea and know, are you getting the proper ratios of carbohydrates, proteins, fats, fiber, and then also looking into your micronutrients to make sure you are not missing out on some very important micronutrients, especially as a woman. Are you getting the proper amounts of calcium? Are you getting magnesium, potassium? Are you eating your leafy greens to get these things? Are you overeating oxalates, which could lead to kidney stones? So understanding those nuances and being able to incorporate that into your diet in a healthy, balanced manner is very important. And the nutrition labels can help with that. So, an active athlete cannot survive on salad and bananas for breakfast. Sorry, if that's what you're eating and you feel awful and have no energy, I can't say that I blame you, because if all I ate was salad and a banana for breakfast, I would probably not get out of bed. So if I like to eat, and that's the one beauty part of a plant-based diet, is that if you like to eat, you can certainly do that on a plant-based diet, because um, the calories compared to the calorie density is so much lower. So, much easier. All right, I'm jumping over at this point to the presentation slides so that I can share some of the information that I have in a visual format. So let's start with food labeling in the United States. The FDA requires that certain ingredients and nutrition information has to be listed. So, for example, on the food labels, it is regulated how they appear on the label, the organization of the information. That's why when you look at a label, it's consistent on, package to package to package. Terminology, legal ingredients, text formatting, all those things are regulated. Also, certain nutritional claims are also regulated. So if they are claiming, some nutritional benefit, then there's a regulation surrounding that about what they have to say about it or what they have to disclose. It will contain things like calories, carbohydrates, fat, and fat will be broken down into saturated and trans fat. Sometimes trans fats are naturally occurring, so they do have that on the label, even though they're outlawed in many places. Protein, fiber, and oftentimes cholesterol also. And cholesterol can be a quick indicator too of whether it's plant-based or not. I'll talk about that. So certain vitamins and minerals are also listed. Vitamin D, calcium, potassium, and iron. Again, if a nutritional claim is made on the label, then it has to be listed. So if they're saying this is high in calcium, then they got to make sure the calcium's there. Although calcium's one that has to be there anyway. Um, I can't think of one that's not there that they might mention. But anyway, if they make a nutritional claim, they have to put it on the label. The ingredient list. So once you're looking down below the actual breakdown of the nutrition, you get to the ingredients. And ingredient list is in order of the quantity of the ingredient. So that means that the first ingredient is going to be the ingredient that is in the largest amount in that product. So if you're looking at a bread, let's say, then you look at the label and it says whole wheat flour. Okay, well then the largest amount of ingredient is whole wheat flour in that bread. And then it goes down from there. Whole foods, though, are not required to have a nutrition label. There are some whole foods where I guess they're putting labels on them. I have seen The only time I've seen this is when you buy maybe a package in bulk. So if you bought I can't think of what product I saw, but if you get a bag of avocados, let's say, and it's in one of those little net bags with a label on it, that label may have nutrition information. They don't have to on Whole Foods, but it might. But typically, most whole food products are not going to have a nutrition label and they're not required to. You can look that information up, though, on the internet very easily. So here's a food label breakdown. So if you want to jump over to YouTube, I've got a picture of a nutrition label up on the slide, and it shows the breakdown. So on a basic label breakdown, you've got your calories and your serving size. So that's very important. You have to understand how many servings in a package also. So you have how many servings in the package, the actual serving size. In this case, it's by cups and by grams. It's very helpful if you're measuring and weighing your food to keep track of your nutrition. Then it has the calories per serving. You have your fat, both broken down in saturated fat, trans fat. In this label, you have your cholesterol, which is 0 on this one, sodium, total carbohydrates, and then from that, you've got your dietary fiber, and then total sugars and added sugars. And then lastly, there you have protein. And then below that, you have your basic vitamins and minerals, D, calcium, iron, potassium. So that's your basic nutrition label. It's good to remember that calories equal energy. So calories in and of themselves are not bad. Calories are what keep you alive. So calories are what power your body. Now, where you get those calories from, fats, carbohydrates, protein, that's going to tell you how your body will use those calories, aka energy. So if you are getting a lot of fat and your body is not able to process the fat in a efficient manner, then it's going to be stored. Same with anything, carbohydrates, protein less so. There's some studies, but you can still, do have too much protein. There's a lot of people who are on like a keto diet, for example, who are getting very, very high amounts of protein, and they tend to have some side effects as well. So the body will tell you if it's out of balance. So for calories, each macronutrient has a certain number of calories per gram of macronutrient. Fat has 9 calories, carbohydrates have 4 calories, and protein have 4 calories. And just as an aside, FYI, if you are someone that drinks alcohol, alcohol has 7 calories. So that's quite a lot. When you could be eating, carbohydrates or protein, and you add in alcohol, and that's going to bump things up quite significantly. All right. So Food label at a glance. So we talked a little bit about this. So we got your serving size, calories per serving, fat, saturated fat. So anyway, all the breakdown there. We just talked about all of those with the fiber, protein, cholesterol. Food allergies as an indicator of non-vegan ingredients. So that's a great way to look at a label and to know right off the bat if it has an ingredient in it that you don't want to put in your body. For example, if you are looking at a label for a food that you've never purchased before and you want to know, is this vegan? Does it contain animal products? What I do when I am at the store and I see something new and I want to know if it's vegan or not, I instantly go to the food allergy section at the bottom of the label, and if it says, um, milk or egg, I put it back. That's easy. Done. Didn't have to look any farther. So super simple. You can also look at the ingredient list. So obviously, if it says milk or egg as an allergen, you know pretty quickly. But there might be some other ingredients in there that you just don't want in your food products. So, for example, I avoid all tropical oils. That includes palm oil and coconut oil. They are not found to be beneficial for cholesterol. Um, so if you are on a plant-based diet, but you've been struggling with cholesterol and you are still eating tropical oils, like you're eating processed foods that may contain palm oil, I strongly advise you to take a look at the labels of the processed foods that you are consuming, even if they're otherwise you think that they're healthy. They could be bread products, they could be crackers, they could be a number of things. They might be vegan or labeled vegan, but they so often have palm oil. There are a number of food products that I used to love. I used to love the sweetened banana chips that I would get in bulk at the store. I no longer eat those because they are made with palm oil, and palm oil has shown to negatively impact my cholesterol level. So I no longer eat, those banana chips. And if anybody knows of a banana chip that is not made with palm or coconut oil, would you please send me a message? Because I really miss them, but I just refuse to eat them. Um, Another thing is to look for hidden non-vegan ingredients, just in general, things like I said that you don't want to eat. You may need to look for different or more items. So maybe it's not vegan that you're having the issue with. Maybe you're trying to avoid soy for some reason. Um, that's a whole other topic, but some people are allergic. So, if you are allergic to soy or you have an intolerance to soy, that might be something you need to look for. Also, gluten containing products, wheat, for example. You might have a intolerance or an actual allergy. So, those are things that you also will want to look for. I'm guessing that if you have one of those allergies or intolerances already, that you probably are pretty in tune to reading these labels as it is. So now you'll just simply add to that, looking for other animal source products, milk and eggs, cream, sour cream, milk powder, things like that. All right, so there's some sneaky ingredients, like I was just talking about. So if you've been plant-based for any amount of time and reading these labels, you're gonna relate to this. They put milk in everything, like random weird things, right? That you would never think that there was milk in. I've bought potato chips before, and then I look at the bag, I'm like, "There's milk in there," and they're not even flavored. They're just milk in a potato chip. So you can't trust anything. That's that's what I've determined. And milk goes by lots of different names. I just added a couple of names that are most common, but there are a lot of names that milk can go by. So one would be casein, that's a milk protein, whey, ghee, milk powder. That seems to be the one I see most. And then some less obvious ones are nougat and artificial butter flavor. You see that sneaky word artificial and you think, oh, it's not real, so I can use it. Well, they still use milk to create the butter flavor. So it's not vegan. There's still milk in there. And then another thing to look for that I noticed is salad dressings. Whenever I go to a restaurant, I always ask about the salad dressing before I eat it. Otherwise, I just use the vinegar because a lot of salad dressings use egg in the salad dressing as an ingredient. Um, if you buy them off the store shelf, just check the label as we're talking about. Um, but for some reason, I found that in restaurants, a lot of them have egg, but sometimes, or more often in the stores, you can find, as long as it's not a creamy dressing, a lot of those are okay. But again, you got to watch for those other sneaky ingredients that might not be on your top health list, like the oils. So, if you want to know what I use for salad dressing, is I just use a really high quality balsamic vinegar. Um, and I know I've talked about this on other podcasts, but my favorite is either a dark balsamic vinegar or maybe during the summertime, I'll do a white balsamic vinegar. And that's it. I just use a balsamic vinegar that's a flavor and high quality. And you don't need anything else. I don't need oil, nothing, because I try to avoid oils in cooking because I just simply don't want the extra calories, and there's no fiber in it, and there's really no nutritional value in oil. So I don't see the value in it, and so I skip it. But you do you. That's me. All right, back to sneaky ingredients. Vitamin D3. So, vitamin D3 is one you have to know the source. And they don't usually tell you the source of vitamin D3 if you're just looking at a nutrition label. You would have to probably reach out to the manufacturer or look at the website, or if it says on it, vegan source of vitamin D3, or if it says the product is vegan and it has D3, you could probably safely understand that they used a vegan source of D3. But D3 comes from, if it's vegan, it usually comes from lichen, which is a sea, I think it's a sea moss or something. It's a sea plant. It grows kind of like on places that are damp and wet, but I don't think it's it's not a fungus, I don't believe. So it's called lichen. And then a animal source of D3 is lanolin, which is sheep's wool. So they take the oils from the sheep's wool and pull it out and make the D3. That's the most common source of D3 is the sheep's wool. So if you don't see anything about vegan, then it's likely lanolin that they used. Honey is a product that you may or may not want to consume. If you are more plant based and not necessarily vegan for ethical reasons, you might consume honey. Or if you are, vegan for more ethical reasons, not necessarily starting with the plant, and now you're moving toward the health side, you may not consume honey. And there are some really good vegan sources of like vegan honey now. I haven't had an opportunity to try them, but I have heard from other people that have that the vegan honey that they've had has been fantastic, and that they had no idea that it was different. I'm looking forward to being able to find some and to try it myself, but that's an option for you if you like honey. I've never been much of a honey consumer to begin with, so it's not something I've really missed. But you make your own decision for yourself on whether honey is something that you will avoid or that you will allow. Again, palm oil, any tropical oils, high in saturated fat. Gelatin is a product that you would want to avoid. Gelatin is made from animals. I believe it's made from I want to say the hooves. Not very up on all of the vegan animal um, side. I went plant-based for health reasons. So I'm plant-based for health reasons. But then once being plant-based for health reasons, I have become more aware of the animal suffering and animal rights and the um, the environmental reasons that so many people are vegan. but it is not my primary understanding and knowledge. I really understand more the health side of it. So if I stumble a little bit on sources of some of these things, that would be why. But the gelatin does come from an animal source. I 100% guarantee you that. And you see that in things like marshmallows and gummies. You also see that in some supplements. So, if you take supplements, you want to make sure that they are not using gelatin caps for your supplement. You want to look for a vegan or vegetarian option where they'll use cellulose or some sort of plant based derivative for the capsule. Shellac is another one. That's often found whenever there's like a candy with a shiny shell or something that's red, because I think that the bug that they use is red to make that. They crush them all up and create this powder that they use to create hard shell candies. So, anyway, that would not be considered a vegan product. And again, they are made with bugs, and just like honey is made with by bees, not of bees, but by bees. Some people are not okay with that. But these are sources that, are sneaky ingredients. They are animal derived. And so I wanted to bring them to your attention so that you are aware and you can make your choices as you're reading labels. Okay, so moving on to the almighty powerful fiber. Now, as runners, fiber can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing. So, but I've always thought of fiber as a very good thing. And it is, especially for all the health reasons that we need to get enough fiber in our diets. And as a plant based athlete, you are going to be naturally getting more fiber if you are getting your proper calories. You are going to be getting more fiber than your everyday person on a non plant based diet. Um, Fiber lowers the risk of cardiovascular disease, certain types of cancer, protects against weight gain and obesity, uh, divicular diseases, and functional constipation. Can't talk about fiber without talking about the other end. So, as fiber increases the risk for metabolic disease like type 2 diabetes, it goes down. So, fiber is very important for overall health and to protect against these very serious chronic and lifelong diseases. It also reduces inflammation. So, as an endurance athlete, inflammation can slow your recovery. Inflammation keeps you from being able to give it your all at the next workout. So, anytime you can do something through dietary means to reduce your inflammation, you're going to be a step ahead. And I think a lot of where the plant-based athletes benefits come from is through reduction of inflammation because their diet is so anti-inflammatory. There's a fiber rule that I'll share with you also. The 5-to-1 fiber rule. This can be found, by the way, on nutritionfacts.org if you want to just type in 5:1 or just type in fiber rule. And you can watch the short video about this if you want to see the whole thing. But I'll give you the calculation for the 5-to-1 fiber rule. It's good for calculating fiber content for packaged bread and grain products and cereals. It's not going to work on everything, but specifically those products where you're looking for a high fiber option. So, the way that you do this, the way that you calculate the fiber ratio on a packaged grain product is number one, you look at the first ingredient. Is the first ingredient whole? Does it say whole wheat or whole grain or whole oat? Some sort of whole grain of some kind. So if it says whole, check the box, move to step number two. Step number two, divide the carbohydrates by the total dietary fiber on the label. Once you do that, if the number you get after that division is anything over 5, then that product is a low fiber ratio. So you're looking for 5. And if it's 5 or less, that means it has a high fiber ratio. And then you put it in your packet, in your cart, and off you go and buy your new product. It can be helpful when you're not sure about what you want to buy. If you're looking for that high fiber product and you are looking for something new, this is a great test to start your search and to determine, is this a high fiber product or not? And on my slides on YouTube, I'm showing 2 nutrition fact labels side by side because I've talked a little bit about oat bran on the podcast before. And I've mentioned that I use oat bran as opposed to oatmeal for managing cholesterol levels because oat bran it has more fiber. It's healthier. So here's the breakdown, and I did the 5-to-1 fiber test on oat bran and steel cut oats because everyone talks about how healthy steel cut oats are. And they are. I'm not going to take that away from steel cut oats. They are healthy and they are a good product. And if you like steel cut oats, keep eating them. But when it comes to the fiber rule, I did the calculations for each one of them. Oat bran has per serving 19 grams of carbohydrates, and total dietary fiber is 4 grams per serving. The fiber ratio then is 4.75. So that's less than 5. So we keep it, goes in the cart. Steel cut oats, total carbohydrates per serving is 30 grams. Total dietary fiber is 5 grams. So the fiber ratio for steel cut oats is 6. It's higher than 5, so the recommendation if you're looking for a high fiber grain would be to swap it, to buy something different. So again, no controversy here. But if you are looking for a high fiber grain, then in this instance, oat bran would be more beneficial than the steel cut oats. So anyway, use that next time you're in the grocery store and you're looking for a new grain product. You can do this with cereal. That's a great place to do that. And this is not all encompassing. If you're looking at it at a new product and it's got this great ratio, but yet it's got palm oil in it, or it has a non-vegan ingredient. Obviously, there's going to be other factors that will determine whether or not that product is good for your lifestyle or not. But this is a great way to determine fiber content if you're looking for something with more fiber. You can also use this sort of in reverse too. So if you're carb loading and you're looking for low fiber products or grains so that you can do your carb load, that's a very finite amount of time and a very specific purpose. But you can use this rule in reverse too to find things that are low fiber and not on your high fiber scale for when you're carb loading. So it's a good tool for that too. And I want to give one last word about sugars and fats because those are two sugars aren't macronutrients, but the fats are macronutrients. But these are two ingredient ingredients that tend to get demonized. And sugars in and of themselves are not a bad thing. It depends on the source. So if you are eating a whole fruit, if you're eating a plum, if you are eating a plum versus a prune, right? So one is dehydrated, concentrated sugars, whereas the other is a whole food with all the fiber intact. That's going to work in your body very differently. And that kind of goes back to another episode that I did where we talked about the glycemic load index. That's going to adjust how your body uses that energy. But sugar in and of itself is not a bad thing, especially when it comes from whole foods. What you want to watch for when you're looking at a nutrition label is added sugars. Added sugars are going to be basically just that, table sugar. It's going to be sugar. And that's going to be added on top of any naturally occurring sugars. those are the things you want to watch for. And again, those should be very limited if you're looking for a healthy plant-based diet. And especially if you're looking at a whole foods plant-based diet, then added sugars will not be in your diet at all. Um, but I don't know a lot of people, honestly, that follow a 100% whole food plant-based diet, although that does tend to be the healthiest diet available. Um, plant are fats. So fats broken down, like we talked about, between saturated fat and trans fat. Saturated fats can lead to elevated cholesterol and cardiovascular disease, very strongly proven. And so those are things that you want to limit. And saturated fats can be found in plant based sources. So, for instance, nuts, seeds, avocados, coconut, all of those have saturated fat and have fairly high levels of saturated fat. Also, if you like to consume some of the alternative meats, those also can be high in saturated fat. So you want to watch those and maybe limit the consumption of those alternative plant-based meat products. Doesn't mean that you can't ever have them, but you limit them. Limit the amount that you're eating if you are avoiding those saturated fats, which tends to be a good idea if you are health-minded. Limit quantity also. So American Heart Association, they suggest limiting saturated fats to no more than 5 to 6% of your total daily calories. And you can calculate that just based on what you're getting in your diet and what your calorie levels are, to determine, what that number is for you. But the lower the better when it comes to saturated fats. Those good polyunsaturated fats, things like that, those are much better. But watch for those the saturated. All right. So that is our episode today. I really, really tried not to make this a full masterclass on reading nutrition labels, but I still wanted to make sure that I got all the information out to you and shared about things to look for on a nutrition label. And I don't know, I think it ended up being somewhat of a masterclass anyway, but hopefully you got something out of that and you learned something from the episode today that you could use. I'd love to hear what you gained from the episode. And if you have any questions about it, chat with me over on Instagram. I also have a Facebook group that you can join, or a Facebook page that you can join up on and talk with me there and connect. Of course, if you're watching on YouTube, there's a comment section there. Lots of ways to reach out to me. And I hope you do, because I really love it when I do hear from podcast listeners and I'm able to connect and hear your story and share a bit deeper than I can on this podcast. Anyway, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. That was episode 12. I will see you here next week for episode number 13. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. And don't forget, run your best life on carbs. I'm Coach Val. I'll see you next time on Running on Carbs podcast. Take care.